Good morning, class. I'm Dr. Daniel Makupi. I'll be taking you through this course known as Advanced Database Management System. This course is an extended course from what you had learned previously from Database 1. So in this course, I'll just take you very quickly to an overview of SQL, then RDBMS concepts, and specific concepts that we'll be looking include RDBMS constraints, integrity, and normalization. Key points. Secondly, we'll be looking at RDBMS databases. What are these databases that we talk about? Relational databases. So in general, we'll be looking at database models. In these database models, we look at ER model, network model, and relational model, which is one of the models you have covered before. We'll be looking at SQL syntax, or the structured query language. You have done it, and at this stage, I know you can differentiate between DDL, DML, and DCL statements, but we are going to look deeper in doing other advanced tasks using this structured query language. We'll also look at data types when it comes in relation to SQL, operators in detail, also SQL operations, and looking at these operations with a Boolean, numeric, date, and many, many other expressions, we will be able to appreciate in a general overview, the DML, DCL, and DDL. Again, we will look at joins, unions, indexes, issue about database cloning, wildcard operators, duplicates, and SQL injections. So those are some of the key areas that we will be able to look into. Maybe I can as well share this overview to you. This is what is entailed in this overall overview, which you have already in your e-learning portal. You should be able to see those particular topics, including data distributed system, data warehousing, and big data. Very important. So that is it for this particular course. Maybe as a beginning and introductory class, just to remind you, we need to agree that SQL as it stands is a structured query language and is a computer language for storing, manipulating, and retrieving data stored in relational database. That is what exactly you did in database 1. You should be able to understand SQL and its aspects of storing, manipulating, and retrieving data as stored in a relational database. Remember, I said we have different database models. We have ER model, we have network model, NoSQL database, and many, many, many others. But our core area is relational database, a database which is implemented in form of a relation, that is rows and columns. So SQL as it stands is a standard language for relational databases. And all relational database or RDBMS, the reason why I say RDBMS is to signify relational database management systems. Examples include MySQL, MS Access, Oracle, Sybase, Informix, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, and many, many, many others. So these databases known as RDBMS support SQL as a standard language. So basically, the reason why SQL, which is one of the standard languages being used by relational databases, is that one, SQL allows users to access data in any relational database management system, allows users to describe the data, allows users again to define data in database and manipulate those data, you see? So I can easily, of course, once you are using any RDBMS, you can easily describe and see the structure of data and also define the data stored in that database. Allows, again, to embed with other languages using SQL modules, libraries, and pre-compilers. We have something known as PLSQL, procedural language, structured query language, you see? So we are talking about embedding a procedural language into structured query language. So very important that it allows to embed with other languages, allows users again to create and drop databases and tables, which you must have done in previous class, that you are able to create a database. Again, I can drop that database or specific tables. Very important. That is part of those DML statements. Allows users again to create stored procedures, view functions in databases, and also allows users to set permissions on tables, procedures, and views. That's just an overview of functions of SQL. Now, taking you to brief history about SQL to just appreciate, which you must have done in database 1. So this very wonderful language known as structured query language was actually designed by Bell Labs. So its inception, SQL started from Bell Labs. But the concept about relational databases was coined by Dr. Edgar F. Codd, who is actually being treated as the father of relational databases. The concept about storing data in form of relations. So 1974, we had inception of structured query language, which appeared. So this structured query language is the one which now will operate on relational databases. So IBM worked to develop code ideas and released a product named System R. So this noble man known as Dr. Edgar F. Codd has a number of rules for relational databases, which we must have covered before. So consequently, you realize in 1986, IBM developed prototype of relational database and standardized by American National Standard Institute, one of the institutes which certifies these software systems. So the first relational database was released by Relational Software, which later came to be known as Oracle. And our core key area of concern in this course on advanced database, we will be using Oracle. I'm assuming that in database 1, you must have used MySQL. So maybe a snapshot of SQL process. What happens when you write a structured query language or when you execute a structured query language? You need to see the process. So this is what we refer as SQL process. So at any given time I execute a command, the system determines the best way to carry out your request or to execute whatever script you've written. So this aspect is figured out by something known as SQL engine. So this interprets the tasks. So normally, there are various components included in this process. We have the query dispatcher, optimization engine, classic query engine, SQL query engine. So this is the general diagram. So you will realize that as I talked about, I said that the SQL engine. So this SQL query engine is the one which handles all the non-SQL queries, but SQL query engine won't handle logical files. So following, it is a general architecture, a diagrammatic architecture representing the SQL architecture. So once you have an SQL query, it goes to a query language processor. Then that query language processor works in conjunction with parser stroke optimizer, plus optimizer in that regard. So this parser and optimizer is actually looking towards the aspects about that language. You know, if you have been in a class of that is compiler design, you must understand if you have come across something known as parser and optimizer, and you understand the functions. So it tries to clean the language, make it be able to execute query language processor. So in conjunction with query language processor, parser and optimizer, tries to look on constructs, whether you have made the language meets the construct, the rules, and the others of that particular language, then moves to a DBMS engine. So DBMS engine works in conjunction with a file manager and a transaction manager. Transaction manager manages transaction. Of course, we have an independent topic dealing with transaction. So we'll be looking at more on asset properties of transaction, atomicity, consistency, integrity and durability properties of a transaction. What a transaction must be able to achieve. So that is it. Then this is the physical storage in a hard disk, where the data is stored, which we are trying to pull using this SQL query. Now, SQL is a standard language which interacts with relational databases to create, select, insert, update, delete, and drop. Those ones are commands you're familiar, and they are classified broadly into these categories: data definition language, data manipulation language, and data control language. So generally, you need to know which and every command belongs to or what it does in that regard. So create, alter, and drop are DDL languages. So you need to know create allows you to create a table, create a database, and many things. Alter allows to modify a database object or a table. Drop drops an entire database or a table in that regard. So DML includes select, insert, update, delete from the word manipulate. Doesn't do anything like you cannot delete, you cannot move like that. The only thing is you can only manipulate. So this select, insert, update, delete, select, retrieve certain records, inserts a record, update, modifies a record, and delete, deletes a record, that specific record. Then very important on security is data control language, which is a grant, gives a privilege to a user, and revoke takes back privileges granted to a user. So that is it. That is it on regard to this SQL process and some of the languages that are used in that regard, or classification of these SQL commands. So in the next session, I'll be looking towards starting from SQL RDBMS concepts. Thank you.